Good morning. It's a rainy day outside, so I won't be going to the cemetery to do a video today on the only day that I have available to. So instead, I'm doing a story from right here in my living room and just giving you some pictures. It's a very compelling story. I ran across a picture of a little girl. The picture, I think, was taken in 1913 or maybe 1911. And this is a child labor type picture, and it had her name on it, which I'm the kind of person that likes to kind of investigate things out. Wonder what happened to, how did she end up in life? And there was a name that I could go with and do some investigating on this. Her name was Rosie Berdych. And the caption says, and I got notes down here, so if you see me, I'm looking at my notes. The caption said that she was 7 years old, illiterate, working in a canning factory all day in Bluffton, South Carolina. And so let me bring up another picture of her. At the end of this video, there will be a whole lot of other pictures like this, but not of her. Her pictures will be in the forefront. I found more pictures of her, but they were copyrighted, as she got older and how her life went and her husband and all that stuff. But they were copyrighted, so I decided it'd be best just not to post those pictures. But what I'll do is I'll post a link down below, and when you get done watching this video, go to that link, and there'll be basically her life story. So here's the information that I found, okay? Now, at 7 years old, she'd worked all day at the canning factory, Varn and Plant Canning Factory, outside of Charleston, South Carolina. It said that she'd already been at it for a year, which means she started at 6 years old. And it also said that she had a younger sister that would soon be joining her in her labor. Now, I found another picture, which I'm going to show now. This was taken 3 years later. And at this point, she's attending school. The laws apparently were different in South Carolina than they were in Baltimore, Maryland, which I'll bring up why I bring that up shortly. Because her mom felt compelled to go ahead and send her to school because she was afraid of the law. This was a family. She was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Her mom and dad were immigrants. Her dad, if I remember correctly, was from Germany, and her mom was Polish. So they moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and then they would go back and forth. I did a little, study on what was going on at the time. And a lot of the families, particularly at this point in time, it is a lot of Polish immigrants that were doing this. Earlier, it had been, I think, German immigrants that were doing the same, and they just kind of, become Americanized and realized they didn't have to do that. But these Polish immigrants would travel from Baltimore down into South Carolina and along the Gulf Coast to do canning for the seafood industry. The picture I showed you earlier was of her shucking oysters. Now, I don't know if you ever shucked oysters before. It's not easy work. And if this is something she had done into her teenage years, she probably had Popeye-like forearms. But as it was, she didn't do it all the time because the laws changed, thank goodness. So at 10 years old, she is attending school at this point. You can see a difference in the picture. When they're in South Carolina, but they migrate back up to Baltimore where she still has to work because the family migrates back and forth. Now, she was born in Baltimore, Maryland, July 29th, 1905. To Polish-German immigrants. She got married young. She got married in 1923. Some sources say 1921. That'd make her between 16 and 18 when she got married. She married a man that was just a couple years older than her. I think he was born 1903. And he was a pipe fitter outside of Charleston, South Carolina. His name was James DeChristie. I've seen James DeChrista, James DeChrist, Christ, I-E or E or A. So I'm not sure his name. But it was somewhere along those lines. He was a pipe fitter. And they had 5 children. Now, he provided a good living for the family in his job. Later on, they bought a dairy farm. Again, I think it was at a place called Young's Island, which is outside of Charleston, South Carolina. And they had a dairy farm. Now, she loved to cook, and she talked about Polish food, but she never really cooked it, from what I understand. You know, remember, her mom was from Poland, but she loved to cook. She did not work in the labor force ever. Once she left the child labor market. She did not work the labor force. Her husband provided for the family. And like I said, they bought the dairy farm. And they had 5 children. Now, Mr. DeChrista, whatever his name was, he died in 1969. I think it was from emphysema, if I remember correctly. And he was Catholic, and she was Catholic. That's what the report said, but they're buried at St. Paul's Church, Episcopal Church. And I don't see why a Catholic would be buried in an Episcopal church if they were both Catholic. Now, I don't see why a churchyard would have someone in it that was not a member of the church. You know, these are questions that maybe whoever said they were Catholic was confused, because Episcopal and Catholic, to an outsider, look a lot alike. They look a lot alike. And it seems like I even heard that she, the little girl who grew up, when she got older, recited a rosary daily, which would conflict with being Episcopal. So I'm really not sure what the deal is there. She loved to cook. She didn't work outside labor force. Later on, she sold the farm when the husband died. A little bit later, she sold the farm, and she made enough money off that, between that and getting her husband Social Security, to live off, and reportedly lived well. She wasn't in need for anything. She never talked. Now, I'm kind of looking heavy at my notes here, okay? So just bear with me. She never talked about her childhood labor. Her children knew that she was the child of migrant workers who thought they just, picked berries and food out in the fields, but they were migrant workers, but apparently that's not what they did. They worked at the cannon factories. Moved back and forth from Baltimore to South Carolina coast, usually right around Charleston. Like I said, she loved to cook, and was said that she was always cooking. And one granddaughter said that she taught her how to cook, which is kind of funny because she wouldn't allow her own daughters into the kitchen to cook. And so she said, thanks to her grandmother, she's a better cook than her own mother. So in the last years of her life, they say she had dementia. And so she ended up moving in with her daughter in the very last years of her life, where she died February 2nd, 1990. And they said that she got in conversations with her husband, who had deceased years earlier in her dementia. And, sometimes I have to wonder if maybe for real they're talking to someone. I've heard, and I'm sure you have too, of people in their last little bit of life talking to someone that as if they're really there, that has been gone earlier. And I don't know, these are questions. My mind just works that way. So that's pretty much her life. She ended up doing very well in life. There was a photographer who took these pictures, and I can't remember his name at the moment. I'll post it down below, his name, and you may look at other pictures that he did back in the years, in the very, very early 1900s, when he was part of trying to defeat this child labor that was going on. And this was actually legal nationally until the 1930s, when the child labor laws were enacted, which are pretty much the same now. Pay attention to the pictures coming up. I got an announcement from my granddaughters first, but then just look at these pictures and just thank God that you didn't grow up this way and that your children don't have to grow up this way. Y'all have a good day.
And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up.